thinking about some different things. And, you know, I got in the middle of Russ and George starting this latent image company, which was in a $50 a month flat and a storefront.
Wait a second, it was $65.
$65. Well, they weren't exactly poor then. But that I got drafted, so I'm going into the Army, and Rudy Ritchie and I, before I leave for the Army, I'm going to say goodbye to George and Russ. And so Rudy grabbed a 6-pack of Pepsi out of the refrigerator, his mother's refrigerator, and he popped Jiffy Pop popcorn that you'd shake it over the burner and it would make an aluminum thing like a globe. And I said, why are you doing that? He said, well, George and Russ haven't eaten for 3 days. So we go down to this flat on the south side of Pittsburgh, which was kind of a really low-end district then. And George and Russ were playing a hockey game with levers where you make the hockey guys move and hit this little puck around. And they fed the popcorn to their pet monkey. And they drank the Pepsi. And they said, if we're doing well when you get out of the Army, you have to come and work with us. Well, as pie in the sky as that idea seemed to me, it kept me going through 2 years in the regular Army, and I just couldn't wait to get out and start to work with them. And so that's basically, I taught school for a while, and then I did come to work with Russ and George at Latent Image, and you know, we got heavily into the commercial film business, but always striving to make a feature film.
So I know that you guys were sort of balancing commercials while making this film. What was it like working with George? What was his disposition on set, getting this going while you're balancing all these other projects and doing this over the course of not a linear amount of time?
George was always the kind of person, whether it was a TV commercial that he was directing and producing, regardless of what it was, his attitude always seemed to be, and it's one that I've learned from over the years, George was the kind of director who wanted to let you, the performer, explore how you wanted to portray a role. And he did that with great generosity. It was, he always wanted to see what you were going to bring to the party, and then he would make his subtle adjustments to it if he thought it needed this or that in terms of a character portrayal. But basically, he gave actors their own space. And that is something that stuck with him, as far as I know, on every project he ever did.
Well, the other thing is, you know, the way our company was set up, we only had about 5 full-time people at this little company. And, you know, if Russ was directing, he was also the cameraman and the editor on whatever job he was handling. George handled most of the jobs because he got so respected in the business that a lot of clients wanted only George to be their cameraman, director, and editor. And if I was doing a job, then I was the cameraman, director, and editor. So our basic team crew for every job that came through there was a cameraman, director, usually Russ's brother Gary on sound, and then somebody on lighting in general. But then we all pitched in with everything. And to prepare for that job, we all did pitched in on costuming and location scouting and all the logistics that went into it. But George was an absolute genius with a camera. It was like that camera was part of him. And of course, when you are the cameraman director, you're constantly you're blocking the action and directing the actors and doing everything that goes into getting that image on the screen. And you have to be visualizing the editing, how that blocking and all those different angles are going to fit into an edited thing. So a lot of times when he you know, he could work with unskilled actors, and he knew he could rely on his skill as an editor and so on to make that a polished work when it finally came out. And then, like, when I got out of the Army, if, let's say I was dating somebody, or I had a friend and I'm out drinking, or whatever I'm doing, I used to love bringing them down to the latent image even before I started full time, because it wasn't like today where everybody's a filmmaker, because everybody knows, you know, with a digital camera and a digital editing, people are in general much more familiar with the process. Back then, it seemed like a miracle to have a little company in Pittsburgh that could actually combine sight and sounds on film, and it looked professional and it went on television. You know, it was an amazing thing back then, and had a status that it doesn't, you know, quite enjoy now. I mean, the magic is worn off because we all know what it is.
Just to put a time frame on that, we're talking about that we started the latent image in 1963. For any of you who need a historical marker, that was the year that John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
And then I didn't answer your question, but along with this, we're doing all this commercial work, killing ourselves, often going 3 and 4 days with no sleep, and, you know, shooting and editing and every other thing, driving from one location to another. And then George and I were with Richard Ritchie, who was Rudy's cousin and happens to be the first guy shot in the head in Night of the Living Dead by the window, okay? That happened later, but now Richard's with an advertising agency that we helped get him the job there. And George and I are bitching about the fickleness of our commercial clients who, when they had a little money to spend and needed a good professional, inventive job, they would hire us, and always with promises, when we get more money, we're coming right back here. And then most of them didn't. When they got big budgets, they went to Hollywood or New York and saw the stage plays and all that stuff. So Richard said, well, why are you bitching about it? Why don't you do something about it? And I thought for a while, and I said, well, look, we just bought this 35mm camera last week from the laboratory. We paid $3,500 for it. And I said, what if 10 of us, like 5 of us at Latent Image and a few friends, kick in $600 each? Even if we have to borrow it from finance companies or whatever, we'd have $6,000. We could shoot black and white 35mm, work print it down to 16mm, because all our editing and mixing equipment was 16. Maybe we could make some kind of a horror film that, you know, that would be better than the stuff we're seeing on Chiller Theater and so on. Well, George immediately, anytime there was any prospect of making any kind of film, I don't care what it was, George just got tremendously enthused, and he says, we're gonna make a movie! Bang, slams his hand on the tabletop, and all the bottles and glasses go flying, and all the people in there are staring at us, and Richard drags on his cigarette, and he said, you guys are crazy. I said, you want in or out? Takes another drag on his cigarette, and he says, I'm in. So that's how the thing got started. Russ, you can probably tell about how he went in. Right away, he wanted in, Gary wanted in, Vince wanted in. Vince was the guy that ended up shooting Ben in Night of the Living Dead. There was one guy that worked with us that wanted us to take the same money and make a TV commercial. So.
Well, our time is limited, and I want to get in a couple quick questions, though. First about, I mean, this is a movie, Night of the Living Dead, that really became a tremendous influence, and the three of you together pioneered a genre, and we all have you to thank for that, the zombie genre.
Thank you.
I just want to close by asking the two of you, working with George, and in life and work, what do you see most impacted you about his personality and the man who he was that affected both your career trajectory and your life?
Well, since we were friends and business associates for 60 years, that's a long time to maintain a relationship with anybody of any sort. And I'm proud to say that we maintained that relationship, that wide-eyed, optimistic relationship that started back in 1958 when we first met, and it continued up until last July. George has always been to me, and I still refer to him in the present tense because it's a little bit difficult to come to grips with the fact that he isn't here. I respected him, he respected me, he respected most of the people, I think all of the people that he worked with. He was willing to give you breathing room. He was willing to help you and talk you through the rough times, and sometimes help you to see a more creative way of facing a problem, which most production is solving problems, storytelling problems, or physical production problems. But he was the most gracious, creative person that I've worked with ever. And I don't think that's going to change.
When he moved from Pittsburgh to Toronto, we didn't see each other as often. We did see each other a lot when Night of the Living Dead Live, the stage play, was being done in Toronto. But the one thing about George, well, one thing you knew, you were going to laugh your butt off. You were going to have very interesting conversations, because we were all kind of Renaissance men in that sense, you know. We got together because we wanted to paint, and we wanted to act, and we wanted to write, and we wanted to make movies, and we were tired. We didn't, you know, by being together, we didn't have to hear our parents tell us that we better settle down and get a regular job, and, you know, why do we have all this pie in the sky ideas about making movies or writing books? Rudy's father used to tell, I heard Rudy's father telling this 100 times, you better get your head down out of the clouds, boy, or you're not going to be worth the powder to blow you up. So when we were together, you know, it's that whole, like I said before, the burst of joy in adolescence and finding somebody, male or female, or, you know, that thinks like you do and wants to do creative things and not put you down for it, that was great. But always knowing that if you saw George and it wasn't a work situation, or even if it was, you were going to have a million laughs, you were going to experience that joy of being with him, that smile, that laugh, everything about him, the graciousness, the warmth, and etc. So that, I still, you know, even when we were 300 miles away in Pittsburgh and he was in Toronto, I really liked knowing that he was out there doing his thing. You know, that's how I felt about it. And so that's part of the sadness that he's gone, but he's not gone. We're all going to keep his movies alive and his memories alive.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Russ, for coming to share your thoughts and your anecdotes and your memories. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Just thank all of you for being here and being so supportive of George and his work.
One final thought is that as part of the process, George never, ever, ever took an audience for granted. Never. He always, you know, the controversy, well, make films that you like. Well, George did the blending of, he made films that he wanted to make, but he never lost sight of the audience. And I think that that's one of the things why he now has so much respect. And that's thanks to the fans that keep his work alive.
Here, here.